You can go ahead, Councillor Utley.
Okay, we're on. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. Councillor John Utley and the chair tonight. I'd like to welcome Mayor Davis, members of council, staff, Chief Davis, Deputy Chief Saunders, and any members of the public that are joining us this afternoon. So welcome all. Has roll call been taken?
Roll call is complete.
Thank you very much. Rules of procedure. Would just like to remind the task force and our viewing public of a few procedural rules for our virtual meetings in operating as efficiently as possible. All members will be muted for the meeting to reduce feedback. All web cameras for task force members shall be turned on. This is to ensure quorum is maintained. Staff will be requested to join the video meeting should the need to answer questions of members arise. Any member of the task force should indicate they wish to speak by pressing the raise hand button on the participant list screen on the bottom right hand side. Staff will lower the hand when you have been recognized by the chair for your speaking opportunity. And in the event of a connection service interruption that affects quorum or audit of the task force, we may recess the meeting for up to 15 minutes to regain quorum. If quorum is not achieved, then the meeting will be adjourned. Are there any members of the task force who have declarations of pecuniary interest for items appearing on this agenda? I don't see any hands raised. Thank you. Three, there are no delegations that I'm aware of, but there will be 2 presentations for today's meeting. We have 4 items for consideration on our agenda. 4.1, procedural bylaw requirement. 4.2, update on Brantford Police Services Facility Accommodation Plan. 4.3, 70 Dalhousie Street renovation progress update. And 4.4, status update on accommodation strategy projects. If there are no objections, I'd like to bring forward 4.2 to 4.1. Our chief and deputy chief are both very busy individuals, and to respect their time, I'd like to have them go first. So with that, Lise, can you lead us through, please, with this presentation?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you to the members of the Accommodation Task Force for the opportunity to present a report in which staff have prepared to provide an update on the Brantford Police Services accommodations, which has no financial impact at this time. My name is Lise Sordo, Director of Facilities Management and Security, and I'll be providing the presentation this evening. And with me today is the Chief of Police, Rob Davis, and Deputy Chief of Police, Jason Saunders, as well as Patrick Bellina, Project Management Specialist, and Ron Gasparetto, Manager of Real Estate, who were involved in the development of the report to be considered and can help address any questions at the end. Next slide, please. Oh, sorry about that. So at the last Accommodation Task Force meeting, we presented an update on the overall accommodation and yard facility plan post-COVID-19. And at that time, included an update on the assessment conducted by Collier's project leaders, which confirmed the space needs and program constraints of the Brantford Police Services. This assessment took into account the estimated future growth expected over the next 20 years, including the recent boundary growth. The chart shown here demonstrates the size and accommodation needs of the original facility built in 1991. The size of the building was expected to meet their needs for up to 15 years, and for which it did, And in 2005, the facility was expanded to the 61,000 square foot facility it is today. That expansion was expected to meet the police needs for an additional 15 years, for which it has. In order to meet the growth for the next 20 years, it is estimated that an additional 50,000 square feet of space is required. Both the existing facility and the parking are at capacity with a variety of space and program pressures they are currently experiencing, such as the cell blocks that are at capacity, the records and property, which is the evidence storage areas, are reaching capacity. The change rooms are needing an expansion as they're at capacity. The garage requires an expansion as there are many vehicles requiring indoor storage and security that are stored off-site and some in leased spaces. The communications center is at capacity requiring expansion. The community space has been repurposed for program functions and no longer a community space. The shooting range doesn't meet their needs as well, as it doesn't meet the higher caliber weapons and other many other program pressures they're experiencing as well. Next slide, please.
Sorry, I'm just having some issues with the PowerPoint. I'm going to just flip it to PDF really quick. 1 second.
Great, thanks. So the assessment also analyzed the various options available. Cost-benefit analysis was undertaken that evaluated which option would best meet the Brantford Police Services requirements. And due to the existing site constraints with only 5.6 acres of property, the current site plan is at maximum capacity, limiting space for growth, and presents challenging conditions for redevelopment of the site without significantly affecting the efficiencies of their 24-hour ongoing operations. Therefore, without the acquisition of additional lands, option 1 is not viable, and the next best option is the greenfield option and a new build. However, due to the overall budgetary constraints that COVID-19 pandemic has presented us, it was determined that any new build option was no longer affordable. Therefore, staff have been exploring potential alternatives for expanding the current police headquarters for a more cost-effective solution. Through this exploration, we have determined that there is an opportunity to acquire approximately 2 acres of additional land from the adjacent landowner. And after a feasibility review, we've confirmed that if the proposed expansion of the site is successful, then the redevelopment and expansion of the existing property can adequately meet and accommodate the Brantford Police Services long-term needs. The revised Class D estimate at approximately $39 million includes the cost of the land acquisition, saving the city an estimated $20 million when compared to the new build option at $59 million. Next slide, please. All of the major upgrades and capital projects that are required to the facility were reviewed to ensure that life cycle costs and maintenance work that are projected in the short term were included. The analysis also reviewed where additions and parking would go, which I'll show you in the next few slides. The project budget estimate of $39 million includes the design, construction of the new addition, site works, renovation, and upgrades to the existing facility, and the land acquisition required to accommodate the expansion. The costs presented reflect a Class D estimate based on early conceptual designs with an accuracy of plus or minus 25%. Staff are therefore recommending that option 1 to redevelop the existing Brantford Police Services headquarters be as the most cost-effective option to meet the short-term and long-term space needs for the Brantford Police Services. City Council has already approved $6.8 million in previous capital funding to begin planning for the relocation of the Brantford Police Service headquarters, and another $3.6 million has been identified in the 2021 capital budget process for approval, and the remaining $28.5 million will be identified in 2022. Next slide, please. Referencing the diagram shown here and included in the report as Appendix A, the Brantford Police Headquarters, located at 344 Elgin Street, is the smaller parcel on the southwest side, closest to Wayne Gretzky Parkway and Elgin Street, and is identified by the purple building. The property to the north is owned by Enbridge and is located at 348 Elgin and identified by the gray building. The entrance to their property runs along the east end of the Brantford Police property, and through discussions with their realty representatives, it has been determined that there is approximately 2 acres of land available, and that they are interested in divesting of and it would benefit the expansion of the Brantford Police site, while also benefiting their property operations, including minimizing their property maintenance costs. The areas we're looking at include the Elgin Street entrance laneway to the Enbridge site along the east portion of the Brantford Police site, the front entrance laneway to the Enbridge building, which is located along the northern boundary of the Brantford Police site, and the square parcel at the southwest corner of the 348 Elgin Street property adjacent to Wayne Gretzky Parkway. These are identified by the hatched area between the two buildings along the east side of the Brantford Police site, as pointed out by the arrows here. Next slide, please. The diagram shown here and included in the report as Appendix B is the proposed conceptual site plan. It demonstrates that with the acquisition of these lands, a proposed 2-story addition on the northwest corner of the existing structure facing Wayne Gretzky Parkway would be proposed. The addition would have a total floor area of approximately 51,000 square feet, split between 2 floors, and allows for parking stalls to the north of the addition, and additional parking is also possible to the east of the property. In order to make this expansion possible, accommodations for the neighboring property are required, and this includes 2 new access driveways off of Carter Street into the Enbridge property yard and staff parking area. An existing 1-foot reserve currently running along Carter Street will need to be lifted. An easement to protect the existing underground utilities will need to be established in favor of the neighboring property. The utilities are located under the existing driveway, which runs along the easterly portion of the Brantford Police site. A joint access agreement will also be required to permit emergency fire services access to their site, including access to a Siamese connection located on the south side of their building, as well as some stormwater considerations for their site. Staff are recommending to proceed with negotiations to acquire approximately 2 acres of additional lands needed to achieve the option 1 of the redevelopment and expansion of the existing Brantford Police Services headquarters. Next slide, please. There are a few additional considerations or investigations that staff are recommending to proceed with during the preliminary design phase as well. The first is the carbon neutral building retrofit of the existing Brantford Police facility. The Brantford Police Services headquarters is a 24-hour operation and is one of the largest greenhouse gas emission sources in the city facility stock at 257,000 kilograms of carbon CO2 equivalent. Now, as you may recall, one of the short-term goals of the Climate Change Action Plan that was recently approved by City Council is to develop a building retrofit strategy, which involves the complete retrofit of existing buildings to become carbon neutral by 2050. A carbon neutral retrofit for the Brantford Police Services could include sustainable design, including retrofits to the building envelope and building systems, renewable energy options, including solar power and geothermal systems, water recovery, including rain and gray water systems, and the inclusion of electric chargers for future electric fleet. There are variant levels of retrofit we could investigate, including possibly doing just a 50% reduction and up to 100% reduction, which could, if we achieve the 100%, would help us achieve our carbon neutral targets. If successful, this facility could help the city achieve 1/3 of its corporate reduction goals. The cost of retrofitting the facility to carbon neutral is not included in the $39 million estimate. Staff are recommending that a further analysis be undertaken during the preliminary design phase and report back with the business case to include a retrofit to carbon neutral and present the required investment for consideration. Generally, a retrofit to carbon neutral can cost anywhere from 5 to 20% of the renovation of construction cost, which is estimated to be between $2 to $8 million for this project in additional costs. Depending on the estimated return on investment, which includes the life cycle renewal and operational savings that can be also achieved, the city could see long-term operational savings and cost avoidance as a result. Staff will also explore any grants or loans that may be available to support this investigation and potential project. Next slide, please. The staff are also recommending undertaking a feasibility review to include a third floor in the design and construction of the addition to accommodate future growth beyond the 20 years. Constructing a third floor for future growth now is expected to be the most economical and efficient. And this is another example of sustainable design where the space could be left unfinished or considered for fit up to be leased out to a prospective tenant generating revenue for the city. The cost to include the third floor has not been included in the $39 million estimate either, but staff will report back with the estimated cost for consideration. Lastly, staff are recommending reviewing the feasibility of including an additional 20,000 square foot to accommodate ambulance services. Accommodations for ambulance services estimated to require an additional $10 million on top of the current estimate of the $39 million for the Brantford Police Services facility. And as previously noted, there are various challenges with the site constraints, and the additional accommodations would restrict future growth. However, there are opportunities that could be realized by co-location on the site, including shared services and revenue that could offset any additional costs. Next slide, please. So just to quickly recap, staff are recommending to proceed with option 1, which is to redevelop and expand the existing Brantford Police Services headquarters at an estimated budget of $39 million. They proceed with negotiations with Enbridge for the acquisition of approximately 2 acres of land. Report back to council with the final negotiated agreement of purchase, sale, and for final approval. And include the 3 investigations during the preliminary design phase and report back to the Brantford Police Services Board and Accommodation Task Force with details and costs revenue estimates for consideration. As noted here, this has also been presented to the Brantford Police Services Board, who supported the recommendation at its regular board meeting held on November 10th, 2020. Next slide, please. So at this time, the Accommodation Task Force is being requested to adopt the staff recommendations, which will be forwarded to City Council in the next cycle. If approved, staff will proceed with the pre-consultation process, which is the site plan application process. We'll go through and conduct a building condition assessment so we can confirm any kind of code upgrades or accessibility needs to the existing facility. We'll get a land appraisal for the valuation of the lands to be acquired. We'll move on to negotiate the terms and conditions to be included in the agreement of purchase and sale. We will work on issuing a RFP for the prime consultant to work on the preliminary design. Apply to lift the 1-foot reserve along Carter for new access into the Enbridge site. Begin the temporary accommodations planning to minimize disruptions to the operations, as well as the various construction phases, and seek site plan approval and a major zoning amendment, and work towards finalizing the agreement of purchase and sale with Enbridge, and with the final approval coming back by council. Next slide, please. Shown here is an estimated timeline for the project. The preliminary design phase could be completed by summer of 2021, and design development can progress in hopes to be completed by spring of 2022. Providing the site plan application process can be completed in parallel, of course. And construction could begin as early as summer of 2022, with occupancy potentially achieved by fall of 2024 or spring of 2025. Next slide, please. This concludes this presentation. Thank you for your attention throughout, and we're happy to answer any questions that you may have at this time.
Thank you, Lise. Before we go to speakers, Chief Davis and Deputy Chief Saunders, did you want to add anything before we go to questions?
The only thing I would like to add is just a thank you to Lise. She's been a fantastic individual on this project, and her professionalism has been very much appreciated.
Thank you, Chief. First speaker on my list is Mayor Davis, followed by Councillor Wall and Councillor Weaver.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And first thing I'd say is in reference to what the Deputy Chief just said, yeah, I think Lisa has shown us since she was promoted to her current position, what an important, valuable employee she's become. And we've been lucky to be able to retain her in her current role. So question for you about, it's Appendix B, the proposed site plan. And I don't know, Melanie, can you share that for us? Maybe not. Anyways, there is, oh,
Thank
you, Melanie.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. So that the laneway to the east side, on the east side that comes up from Elgin Street, can you move that further to the east to create more parking space?
Yes, we can. We just can't build any buildings in that location because of the easement that will be required in order to sustain their services that are feeding the Enbridge site.
And then up to that northwest parking lot, the proposed parking. So it mentioned the stormwater infiltration area. So can you construct a parking lot in that area?
Yes, we can. And there are other options to address the stormwater, including infiltration galleries under the pavement.
Okay. And the proposed addition, there's talk of looking at potentially doing a third floor. Is the option of constructing only 2 floors, but making sure you're designing it so that it can withstand the weight of a third floor that might be constructed in later years, is that feasible, or is that just generally not done?
That's a common practice. However, when we do go to build the third floor, it will have to be re-engineered. Depending on any kind of code changes, there may be some structural reinforcement that needs to be added at that time as well. So,
okay. Sorry, there was something you wanted to add to that?
Building the third floor is the better option, not just trying to build the structure now to support a potential third floor. Often that might not even happen.
And my last question to you, this talk about possibly adding in 20,000 square feet for an ambulance station, I agree, desperately needed, but how would you possibly do that? Is that even remotely feasible, given how this shows some pretty tight constraints?
It would be very challenging, depending on their operational needs. I believe they do have some administrative needs as well as on-street or direct access to the street as well. So that would put a lot of constraint on the site for future growth. And they would also require additional parking for that too. So those considerations would have to be looked at.
Okay. And is there surplus parking built into this proposal?
It'll meet the growth for the next 20 years.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Thank you, Lise, and thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Wall.
Thank you, Chair Audley. Can we bring that image back up on the screen again, please? Thank you. Sorry, tried to get in there early. Great. My only question about this whole thing currently, at least, is about parking. So there's a lot of parking lot there. Is building up or building a garage or building underground not an option? Or is it a cost thing or?
It is an option. Building a parking garage is very costly. It requires a lot of ongoing maintenance throughout the years and is not a very practical solution. If we weren't able to acquire the additional lands, that would be the only solution, is to build a parking garage.
I mean, maybe it's in here already and I didn't see it, but is there a cost analysis versus those two things, versus acquiring the land versus doing a parking garage?
We did explore that. It would be another, I believe, I'd have to go back and look, but I think it was around another $3 million to be added on for that.
Wow. Okay. What about underground?
It would be very similar. It would require the structural design for that, as well as the components to go along with that, and probably cost about the same.
Okay, those were my questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Wall. Councillor Weaver, followed by Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So for the third floor scenario, we would probably need to have some specific security purposes for that area. So they would need to be able to probably have their own entrance and exit, because I'm assuming the police station is going to have some pretty strict security processes in place. So has that been thought about, making sure that if there's a third floor, and I do like the opportunity to possibly lease it out to make some revenue, but that being said, it would probably need to have their own access to that area. Is that something that's been thought of yet?
We haven't gone through that exercise to go through any kind of a design concept for that yet, but you're correct. We would have to, if we're considering leasing the space out, it would require its own access, and considerations would also have to be given to the flow of traffic onto the site as well, considering that the addition is towards the back end of the property.
Okay, and forgive me, I'm transferring my mind from COVID duties I was just doing. Now I'm trying to think about City Hall duties. So could you remind me, it's not an in-camera item as to what we were thinking of possibly doing to the old City Hall as far as a possible buyer? Has that been discussed openly? I'm sorry, I can't recall if we've talked about it in open session.
If I can, through you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Councillor Utley, we have talked about an open session about selling the current City Hall, but not to any potential buyers as of yet. Councillor Weaver, we have not openly discussed whose potential suitors may be.
Okay, I couldn't remember how far that conversation went along, but is there not a possibility for us to use the City Hall to occupy some of the police people, at the very least through a transition period while there's construction going on? But ultimately, has it been looked at to see if that facility might be a good headquarters rather than building something new?
Yeah, we did go through that exercise to look at that, just the location, and it would not be large enough to relocate their full headquarters. We'd have to put on a significant addition, and the property itself is only a couple acres and really presents way more site constraints than the existing facility does. It was when we did do the cost estimation, it was even a little bit higher than a new build.
Okay, thanks for that. So have we looked at it for just strictly using it as a transition location then to assist them while the build is occurring? Or is the timeline not really going to fit?
It could fit. It is a possibility. We've also looked at the tourism center for that as well. There's only a couple of their operations that could be impacted by the noise or the construction. So as we go through the process, though, we will consider if there is any other interruptions to their services that need to be relocated that would benefit from utilizing that building too.
Great. Okay. Thank you very much, Lise.
Thank you, Councillor Weaver. Councillor Martin, followed by Councillor Carpenter, and then second time for the mayor. Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Lise. If we put the third floor on and it eventually gets utilized for the police services, will that necessitate further parking, or is that amount of parking already been included on site?
I haven't had the discussion with our planning group yet. We have to do the pre-consultation process for that still, but I would assume that we would have to at least have the space to take into consideration of a future expansion for parking.
Okay, it might be necessary to go to a parking garage at that time.
Possibly. We did do a conceptual site plan, and it does show with that it does fit, and even we could maintain that laneway. So that laneway could become that expansion for that addition. Okay.
My other thought is if we did look at building an ambulance station there, it would go where Enbridge Gas's laneway is now, would it not? So they have direct access onto Elgin.
I'm sorry. Can you repeat the question?
If we were to build an ambulance station on site as well, would not the logical place for that be where the gas company has their entrance off Elgin now?
Unfortunately, because of the services
Oh,
that are running underground there, we're not able to build a building in that location. It could go next to it, however, but we have to run that feasibility review,
Okay.
plan that out to see if it would actually fit.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Carpenter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Lisa, are we looking at this building as a Leeds building?
We wouldn't necessarily have to go for a LEED certification, but the building retrofit strategy that we're looking at for one of the alternative considerations that we've proposed would help us achieve some level of LEED certification if we were going for that. There is some costs involved in doing LEED certification though.
Yeah, but there's long-term benefit. There'll be an elevator, obviously, because it's going to be fully accessible.
That's correct, yeah. We would have to put an elevator in.
Now, will there also be community rooms? So like this, like when this police station was first built, there's community rooms. Now they're being used for police needs, but will there be community rooms as part of this so that the community could use these?
Yeah, that is the desire, and that was part of the programming exercise that we went through when considering space.
Okay, has there been any consideration for substations across the city?
Not at this time that I'm aware of.
Okay, and I think you already answered the question. If we had built the third floor and we needed to use the third floor, the additional parking spaces would go where the laneway is. That way they're not, you can park over them, but you can't build on them because it's an easement.
That's correct, yeah.
So that would work fine. Okay, that's my questions for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I'd just like to ask a question before I go to the mayor. Would the 20,000 square feet to accommodate ambulance services, will that reduce the length of time to accommodate police services with their needs for the future?
Yeah, quite possibly it could if it puts enough constraint on the site.
And that, you know, I think that sort of defeats the purpose of what we're doing here to some degree. Do you know if ambulance services on Henry Street have the room to expand their operation at that site? Has that been explored yet?
I can answer that if I can, to Mr. Councillor Utley. The idea of the 20,000 square foot ambulance station at the police was an idea that came from the county of Brant. The idea was we would build it, we would lease it back to them, and they get 50% of the cost back by provincial government subsidy. They have, and so we're looking at the numbers to see if that makes sense for us all, because we're obviously then paying, I believe, like 78% of the 83% of the ambulance bill. Might be a win-win through all this, but they're early stage discussions. So Lee's has kind of put a block program where if ambulance could be. It's really a secondary idea to this police, and we don't really want to drag this whole idea down, but it's really just an initial idea and see if we can do it. But the idea why they would want to do this, they can't expand right now on the Henry Street property. That's the whole reasoning behind it. For your question.
Thank you, Mr. Hutchings. Mayor Davis. And then Councillor Carpenter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and having sitting on the paramedics committee, I can tell you, yeah, the Henry Street facility is inadequate. Let's just say that, and creates both problems. And it's also privately owned. So, but I'm trying to remember the question I had. Oh, this may have to go to Deputy Chief Saunders. It kind of builds off Councillor Wall's question, but there was a first feasibility study analysis done by the Police Service Board. It compared going to a greenfield location to building, renovating the current site and building a parking garage. So that would not be adding any additional land. And I seem to recall that analysis said the cost of adding to the building within the current land envelope and building a parking garage would be more expensive than a greenfield move. Am I correct in that, Deputy Saunders? Is that what that first go around concluded? Is he here? Or?
Yes. Can you hear me, Mr. Mayor?
Oh, there he is. Yep.
Yes. Yes, sir, that was initially evaluated in the first phase of this project. And because of the land constraints, you're correct. It was looking like it would be cheaper to build on a greenfield than add a parking structure within our current footprint.
Yeah, that's what I remember. All right. Okay, thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillor Carpenter, you're up again.
Yeah, I was just going to address the issue of the ambulance center, the $20,000. Did we not look at fire station hall number 3? There's some excess land there, and that could be retrofitted to add a station with the fire department there.
We haven't looked at that yet, so Councillor Carpenter, it was just, again, it was a proposal from the county. They wanted it somewhere near Elgin Street, or in fact, originally, Councillor Carpenter suggestion was they'd heard where we were looking at potentially new police station and we're going to move it to a greenfield, and they wanted the Elgin Street property to lease back from us. So we have not explored the fire station 3. They're more interested somewhere in that Elgin, Wayne Gretzky area.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. There are no more hands up. So Councillor Martin, I believe you're going to move this item, and if you could, we could have a seconder as well, please.
Yeah,
Councillor Mayor Davis. Thank you, Mayor Davis. Could you read out the resolution, please? The recommendation.
Sorry, who's the seconder?
Mayor Davis, sorry.
Okay, I move, seconded by Mayor Davis, that report 2021-47 titled Update on Brantford Police Services Facility Accommodation Plans be received, and B, that staff be directed to proceed with option 1, the redevelopment and expansion of the existing Brantford Police Services headquarters at an estimated budget of $39 million, and amend the capital plan accordingly. And C, that staff be directed to proceed with negotiations with Enbridge Inc. for the acquisition of approximately 2 acres of land located at 348 Elgin Street that will support the redevelopment and expansion of the existing Brantford Police Services headquarters. And D, that staff be directed to present to council the final negotiated agreement of purchase and sale for approval. And E, that staff be directed to include the following investigations during the preliminary design phase and report back to the Brantford Police Services Board and Accommodation Task Force with details and costs and/or revenue estimates for consideration. 1, carbon neutral building retrofit and redevelopment. And 2, inclusion of additional 20,000 square feet to accommodate ambulance service. And 3, inclusion of a 3rd floor for future growth beyond 20 years.
Thank you, Councillor. Any discussion? Mayor Davis. And they're followed by Councillor Carpenter and Martin.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Utley. First of all, in relation to the need to do this, I know people who drive by the police station and they recall it only having put up, I don't know, what is it, 30 years ago, think, well, it looks new. What are you doing needing to replace it? Well, I'll tell you this, I've had numerous tours through the police station, and I'm sure many of you have as well. And you know that that building right now, they've totally outgrown that building in some respects. Certainly the communications department, when you walk in there, you almost can't believe the number of people that are crammed in there and how they're operating elbow to elbow. And with the boundary lands being brought in, as those lands are developed, we know that that area alone needs a complete rebuild and outfit. When you go to the rifle, it's not the shooting range, which is an important part of police training and for them to maintain their certification to use firearms, they can't use that shooting range, really. It's totally, completely inadequate. And then you move into the evidence area and the storage lockers, and again, right bursting at the seams, so to speak. So I don't think there's, to my view, and I'm not one to readily see checks being written for new buildings, but there's absolutely not a shred of doubt in my mind, having seen 2 feasibility studies, having done about 5 tours, that station needs to be either replaced or rebuilt and expanded. And so this option, which I will commend, this really kind of, it's a brainchild of, we don't recognize what he does behind the scenes, but Mr. Hutchings and Lee Sordo, and working with the senior management of the police services, decided that, you know, a greenfield build, and they were looking at different locations for that, of 60 million plus, just, you know, too expensive for this community, given all the other capital needs we have, especially with the build out of the boundary lands. And to their great credit, they have found this, you know, far more affordable, feasible option. And so I commend them for that. I hope that the negotiations with the Enbridge Group will be successful to make this a reality. And so far as the third floor, the ambulance, well, I guess we'll just see what the feasibility, the initial feasibility analysis has to say about that. You know, if it can be done and it seems to make sense, then something we might consider. But and I also, the other reason why I like this is because to try and find a greenfield location and then design and build would provide police services with a new facility at a much late, on a much more delayed timeline than this rebuild option, which can be done much more quickly. Another reason why I think it makes a lot of sense.
You're breaking up, man.
That's it. Thanks.
We didn't catch the last part of your statement there.
Yeah, I'm finished. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Carpenter.
Thank you. I agree. This is probably the best site. We've been selling off greenfield sites actually, rather than buying them for police services. But how is this funded, Lisa? Has this also got development charges coming in for this? Are we collecting development charges all along the way for this expansion?
Unfortunately, I'm not able to speak to that, but I can find that information out for you and get back to you. I believe it was in the capital budget process that's identified.
Then I'd like to move an amendment item C that would identify funding sources when you come back with the report.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. I will do that. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The end of clause B says, and amend the capital plan accordingly. What's in the capital plan for this project now? Is that the 60 million?
Actually, the capital plan, we have amended it to meet the $39 million for now.
Oh, that's already been done?
Yes.
Well, there goes that idea. I was going to suggest we leave the money there. Do we see what the third floor and the energy retrofits were going to cost? But it's already been amended. That's not an option.
I believe it can be re-amended when we come back with those results too. So.
You done, Councillor?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Carpenter, with your amendment, please. You're muted. Still on mute.
There we go. Okay, I just like to, maybe it'd be item C, and that staff bring back a report on funding this facility.
Seconder, please. Can we get a seconder?
Councillor Weaver's got his hand up.
Councillor Weaver, okay, thank you. I can't see, so. Any discussion on the amendment?
Just that, we'll go ahead.
I was just going to answer the original question, Councillor Carpenter, if I could, not to your motion. I know the original question wasn't answered, Councillor Carpenter, that this round of money for the 2021 is 3.6 million. 775 will be funded under DCs and remainder under debt. But that's obviously, Councillor Carpenter, I can't answer your full question for the 36 million, but we can bring that back to your question. Thank you.
Yes, I just want to make sure this probably will not qualify for the development charges, because you have to have something in your capital budget for 5 years before you can use it for development charges. That's my understanding. So this would be quite the faux pas on our part not to be getting development charges for this.
So we have a Councillor Martin.
Thank you. I think Councilor Carver said this would be in addition to Clause C, but I think it'd be better at the Clause B, because it's Clause B that talks about the capital budget and what the amount is. Just a clarification on that. I think Councilor Carpenter's right. We need to know where the money for this is coming from, and if we need to adjust development charges to recover some of this money in the future, then that might be an option for us as well.
I'm okay with that.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. So let's, if there are no other questions, can you call a vote on the amendment, please?
Sorry, we're not doing this vote through eScribe. We're just going to do it through a show of
Yeah,
hands.
Yeah. So if you could call that, please. I guess all those in favor, raise your hands, keep them up until your name's been called.
Councillor Nutley, we don't actually have to do that. We don't need to go through and call everybody's names and record the vote. We just need to state that has been carried. Thank you.
Okay, well, it's a little different. Okay, so as amended, all those in favor? I'm going to put my hand up anyway. I feel better. Looks like we've got all the hands up, Deputy Clerk.
I've got that. Thank you very much. It's been carried as amended.
Okay, thanks very much. So with that, we've completed 4.2. Chief Davis and Deputy Chief, thank you for joining us this evening. And we thank you for all the great work you do and your officers do in our community during these difficult times. So with that, we'll go to 4.1. Lise, you're on deck again.
So 4.1, I believe, is to look at setting a schedule for the accommodation task force, and also to bring back the terms of reference and have it go to council to approve the task force's mandate. The only small section of the mandate has gone through council and been approved. The terms of reference are much broader and will need to be brought to council.
Is this relatively new?
The terms of reference are not. It's they were last updated in 2019, but the procedural is new though. We do need to determine what that schedule will be, or at least set the tentative schedule. We can always cancel the meetings if we don't need them.
Councillor Carpenter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would suggest that I'll move a motion that we have meetings monthly at a regular time. As I'm happy to go with the chair, but in a time for, I think, respecting the members of council that work so they can attend these meetings. And we can always cancel meetings that are not necessary. I see Councillor Martin is that seconding it, Councillor Martin? I think so. Okay. That way we can always put them on our schedules as councillors, and we can take them off if they're not necessary, but at least the public's informed. As this, we can't be calling meetings at the chair. It's not allowed anymore. Thanks.
I agree. Thank you very much, Councillor Carpenter. And I certainly support this. And your seconder is Councillor Martin. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Wall.
I don't even know if this is out of left field or not, but I'm going to ask it because I don't know where else I would ask it. And if we're looking at the bylaw, where did the name of this committee come from? I ask because, I mean, I even looked up the definition of accommodations. Like, I guess it's just not very, I wouldn't know what this was if I was an outsider looking in. And if we're considering changing stuff about the committee, perhaps the name, is that germane?
Please.
Through you, Mr. Chair. I wasn't involved in naming the task force, but I can advise that the purpose of the task force is to advise on accommodation needs for the corporation. So that could be why it's called the City Accommodation Task Force.
But it's like about, again, maybe it's me. Do you know what I mean? A lot of our committees are very descriptive, like the Environmental Policy Advisory Committee is like, oh, that's exactly what it is. Perhaps it's just me not knowing the definition of the word, but I'll talk about it another time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Mayor Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Kind of similar to Councillor Wall. Oh, can you hear me? My internet connection is a bit
unstable. Hear you fine.
I'd almost vote in favor of no meetings and disbanding this task force. I really don't get it. I mean, normally these issues would come to committee of the whole and there'd be greater access for the public as there's greater interest in committee of the whole, and that's followed. I really don't understand why this task force even exists, frankly. I mean, why this just doesn't come right up to committee and we have the full committee all left.
Oh, you're breaking up again. Yeah, you're breaking up, Mayor.
Council hearing these things, and
yeah, Mayor, we're not hearing you at all. We're just hearing bits and pieces.
You know, more publicly followed format.
Sorry, if I may just provide some historical context just to kind of answer some of the questions here. The task force was created in 2014 based off of a couple of reports that were created by the facilities department that were very general in nature, and they discussed various yard and facility accommodation strategies. The mandate of the task force is very general. It has been around for quite some time. So I just wanted to provide a little bit of context for it was originally created to kind of oversee or kind of look at implementing some of the things suggested in the reports. The reports themselves did not have any recommendation other than to be received. So it was a very general task force in nature, and it was created quite a while ago.
Thank you very much, staff. I appreciate that. I've got two more on the list, and then let's get this on the floor. Councillor Carpenter.
Yes, the task force was created to deal with accommodation about our rental facilities and the Eaton's Mall, and to deal with the new city hall and the space needs then, and as well as the water treatment plant and a lot of other facilities that we're needing to deal with. Now, if we were to put it on the committee, the whole structure, it would meet, which meets once a month, and it may not meet the cycle because we only meet 3 times in a month anymore. And this would, putting the committee together at that time before the rule was put into place that we couldn't call the meeting whenever the chair deemed necessary. That's the rule that's holding things up. The idea was to move this along quickly, and a lot of the items for discussion on facilities is in camera because you are purchasing some land, or you're looking to purchase land, or you're looking to sell a building or move out of a building. So it does have a need to be separate at this point, but we can put everything. We can get rid of all committees that council members sit on and make them all committee of the whole if we like. I guess we could do that, but there's nothing secretive about this. It's more public now than ever because it's on YouTube and it's live and everybody can look at it. So I have no problem either way you want to do it. Except for I think putting it back to committee of the whole would be a longer process and would delay things.
Thank you, Councillor. Mayor Davis.
Well, you must have heard something of what I said, given Councillor Carpenter's comments. But I mean, that whole debate, I guess, is not germane to this resolution, but other than to say, you know, it looks like it's frozen again.
Oh, we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. everybody else is freezing in my time frame here. But it is interesting. I know there's several other communities that have almost done away with all their committees and they just go to an expanded like committee of the whole. But anyways, that's for a debate for another day. But you know, if our bylaw requires a procedural, then obviously we got to schedule meetings. I'm not sure we need to meet every month. I mean, why wouldn't it be bi-monthly?
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to say my piece on this. I've been with this accommodation task force from day one, and I didn't realize it was that long ago. Time flies. But it was primarily formed as a result of looking for a new city hall and consolidating many of our other operations in the city. And I see that this committee or task force is coming to the end of its life. I think this year we'll have most of the changes made. And at that point, I would suggest that we review possibly the disbandment of the task force, and then it could be moved maybe into committee of the whole if need be. But that being said, can I get a mover and a second, please? Councillor Wall, and did I see your hand up, Councillor Martin? I did. So any discussion? I don't see any hands up. So Madam Deputy Clerk, I'm sorry, Councillor Wall.
What did we decide? Are we meeting monthly, bi-monthly?
Let's move. Let's get this on the floor. It's on the floor. So your question is, should we meet monthly or not? My recommendation is yes, but I'd like to hear from the other members. Monthly or bi-monthly? You put. Thank you, Councillor Carpenter, and then.
The resolution on the floor is to have monthly meetings, and because you can't schedule meetings at the call of the chair unless it's an emergency meeting. So if we have monthly meetings, it's easier to have them scheduled and then cancel them if they're not necessary. If we book them every 2 months and we need a meeting, we can't do it. So I don't want to tie the hands of the committee. And while we're talking about committees, we have an HR committee that we could roll back into committee of the whole as well.
Councillor Martin.
Actually, I took my hand down because Councillor Carpenter said what I was going to say about monthly meetings and cancel if not needed.
I'm good with that. So if we're okay with that, let's move forward with the recommendation and take a vote on it. Can you call the vote, please? All those in favor, raise your hands. Looks like we're good.
It's carried to meet monthly at a regular time and cancel those meetings that are not necessary. Thank you very much.
Yes. And the vote was unanimous, I'm assuming. Madam Deputy Clerk?
Yes, it was.
Okay, thank you. 4.3, Dalhousie renovation progress update. Lise and Patrick.
We can put the presentation up, please. Thank you. So this is this presentation is intended to provide the task force with just a quick update on the progress of the new City Hall renovations, as well as the move planning currently underway. There is no report for this update as staff are not presenting any recommendations or financial implications. We are pleased to report that the construction is progressing well at this time and is anticipated to be complete by the end of March of 2021. Next slide, please.
I'm glad you said 2021.
And the photos shown here on this slide are of the exterior, some of the modifications made to the site. The photograph to the left is showing the back side of the property along which enters off of Darling Street. At the very far end of the photograph there is a backup generator for parts of the facility, as well as there will be a little bit of parking here and a garbage enclosure on the concrete pad here, as well as a new staircase leading up to the back entrance. You can see along the wall there, the black cladding that's new to the building as well. This is the enclosed area that used to be the loading docks of the post office. So that area has been enclosed in, and on the other side is the staff washrooms, as well as some departments that are on the other side as well. On the very right-hand corner, there is a new accessibility ramp that has been installed to meet the building codes as well as the AODA. There is a railing that will go up if it hasn't already, and this provides accessible access into the main entrance to the new City Hall. We've also gone through the process of receiving heritage approval to install the signage that is currently at our existing City Hall and have it relocated to the new City Hall once we open. This meets the heritage feel and look of the original federal building, and is a good use of that signage to bring it over. Next slide, please. Starting at the basement level, level 0, the very bottom center photograph shows a photo of the mailroom. There's not much going to be happening in the basement. However, there is a large mailroom that will be down there. There's some millwork and counter space for them that's provided, as well as, it's hard to tell, but way at the back, there is a private area for taking phone calls and some workstations for the staff that are working in this area. And once complete, it'll be filled with all the printing machines and accessories. On the top left-hand corner, if you can go back a couple slides back, please. I can tell you that one picture that you saw there is the elevator. You might recall we were putting in a new elevator to meet AODA compliance. And there has been a lot of structural work done on this elevator in order to install it, including structural reinforcement to the elevator shaft and the footings, as well as some work done to the elevator pit too. So it's come along nicely and is not quite operational yet. It's just being commissioned. The other photograph that was there was some new HVAC units that were installed in the basement to provide adequate air circulation throughout the spaces on the various floors. Next slide, please. On moving up to the first level, as we enter the building from the main entrance, where the accessible ramp is and where the lions are, you come on to the welcome desk here shown on the bottom left-hand corner. And you'd be welcomed by the welcome desk staff, and you can go left towards the council chambers into the Max Sherman foyer, or you can go straight down into the customer service area, which is more of a heritage hallway, as we've maintained a lot of the existing finishes, including the terrazzo flooring and the marble. And you'll be able to get service at this front counter here, located on the right-hand side picture. And the top left-hand photograph is the public washrooms that are located right next to the welcome desk to the left of it, including just a little bit further down. If you look down the picture, it's hard to tell, but there is another universal washroom there as well. Next slide, please. If we head down that Max Sherman foyer, you'll find the council chambers. The bottom photograph shows the entrance into the council chambers. The the top left photograph shows it as well. And a little bit of the Max Sherman foyer, where next to the council chambers is a large video feature wall where we could put up media, including any kind of advertisements, display the council meetings that are happening, or any anything of the like. Once inside the council chambers, you might recall that this space is expandable with the 2 training rooms attached to it. I can't show all the photos because we'd be here all night, but this photograph is showing the horseshoe where the councillors will sit as well, and the mayor, and they're currently putting up the wood paneling at the back wall there. There'll be several televisions throughout the space, and the millwork at the front of it is the delegation desks. Next slide, please. Moving back out to the Max Sherman foyer, we would have access to the Charlie Ward room as well. That shows the entrance at the top left-hand corner there, and the bottom photograph shows inside the Charlie Ward room. Again, a little bit difficult to tell, but underneath all that protective plastic is a large boardroom table and some furniture off to the left for additional seating. At the end wall there is some millwork and there will be 2 TV screens. We've kind of blocked them out to kind of show how that would look. There'll be 2 TV screens there for presentations and other media. And the right-hand picture is the council kitchen. This kitchen is located off of the Charlie Ward room as well as the council chambers. Next slide, please. Moving up to the second level, the second floor counter is the first item that you would see when you come off the elevator or off the main staircase. And this counter serves the building department, engineering department, and the planning department. And down to the bottom photograph here is just an example of some of the open office space and the workstations that have been installed. Pretty much all of the furniture on the second floor is now installed. And the top right-hand corner is the Clock Tower Cafe, which is the staff lunchroom. Next slide, thank you. Sticking with the second level, to the left-hand side is the IT service desk. This is within the staff space as well, but is a counter where they can serve staff with their in-person assistance with their electronic devices. At the bottom photograph is the human resources reception desk, accessible from the public space. And to the right is another sample of the open office spaces. This one's actually in the IT services area. Next slide, please. Moving up to the third level, this floor is not as far along as the other floors, as you may recall, with some of the issues that we've run into on this floor of the existing site conditions. However, it has been coming along pretty quickly. They are now installing furniture as they finish up a couple of the finishes as well. To the left-hand side is a sample of some of the open office spaces. I believe that's the Economic Development Department and Tourism. Off to the right is within the councillor offices. This is just one end of it, but those are the workstations being installed in the councillor offices. And then the bottom photograph is demonstrating the mayor's office and the finishes that have been completed there. Next slide, please. So that's just a few photos of some of the features areas that we thought the task force would like to see the progress on. As mentioned, the spaces are shaping up pretty nicely, and once construction is complete and provincial restrictions are removed, we would gladly schedule a tour for any members that are interested. With regards to the construction project budget, the total revised budget is $26.6 million, and to date the project has paid and or encumbered $25.4 million in expenses. Including the remaining cash allowance of $53,000, there is $1.25 million remaining budget. Staff are estimating that approximately $972,000 of estimated additional expenses are still required. which includes the estimated cost to make the move and a few outstanding change orders that are still remaining. So this leaves a remaining uncommitted balance of approximately $280,000. Next slide, please. Move planning is well underway. The completion date has moved up by 2 weeks recently to the end of March, and occupancy is expected at the end of February. The facilities and IT staff are working together to plan the move to ensure proper setup and accommodations for the centralized office. And shown on this slide is a draft move schedule that is still being finalized, but likely not to change too much from what is shown here. IT and the facilities teams will move first to ensure all hands are on deck while staff move in phases over the months of May, June, and July. And customer services is planned to move in July, and the mayor and CAO office and councillors will move in August. Next slide, please. So communications is essential in this move for employees and the public. So we've been working with communications to develop a comprehensive information and awareness campaign for two audiences, including the internal audience, which is our staff and the councillors and the mayor and CAO's office as well. We have a CityNet site up that we're currently updating to make sure that the updated floor plans are on there, as well as progress photos for everyone to see. The frequently asked questions are being updated, are being further developed and updated. And we would like to plan some staff tours, but due to COVID restrictions, we are going to proceed with a virtual option for this and have that available on the CityNet as well. Move information packages are being put together, which includes instructions on what to expect and how to get ready for the move and what will happen once we do move. And councillors will receive the same information and move packages. And there's also the public audience that we've been working with communications on, using the branding already established, which is the My City Hall branding. We'll be communicating changes for the public well in advance, with a strong emphasis on services that'll switch from the old City Hall to the new City Hall. And those key messages will focus on as well on how we're improving the customer service experience. Next slide, please. So in preparation for the move, there is a customer experience team that's been put together that's focused on the customer journey and workflow efficiencies and ensuring that all services are accessible and also can be made available online. Facilities is reviewing and setting up new operating contracts, working with purchasing on that. There is a parking strategy and it's being updated right now to address the work from home model. Standing operating procedures and guidelines are being updated and developed, and we're currently reviewing joint health and safety and fire plans, as well as working closely with communications to develop that external audience campaign. And next we'll be working on planning for the grand opening, and of course this will be pandemic status dependent, and how that will look like will depend on that situation. Next slide, please. So this concludes our presentation. Thank you very much, and we're happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, Lise. It's looking good. First on the list is Councillor Weaver.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Lise, for the presentation. So I think it was the last couple meetings anyway for the accommodation studies that I've asked about our flag raising process. So obviously that's going to have to change. And there was some early discussions about possibly, instead of utilizing a section of the sidewalk in front of the City Hall, to move it to Harmony Square. Has that been any further thoughts from staff about doing that?
Lise, I'm sure Lise has the answer. I'll let her answer. We've been working on it, but yeah, it's been a cross-departmental. So go ahead, Lise.
Yep, we have been working to determine a location for that, and we think we found a nice location in Harmony Square. There's a fountain right now that causes a lot of maintenance issues and for our park services staff. So we've kind of come to an agreement that that would be a good location to put the new flagpoles up, and it would present a really nice backdrop with the south side of Colburn Street there, in behind it when doing any kind of flag raising events.
So one of the other things I had talked to, I believe it was Parks and Rec staff, there's an ability for technology to be used to change lighting color. So they're Hume or Philips Hume bulbs. There's all kinds of different brands with different cost points. But I had asked if there's an ability for us to change out the lights in Harmony Square to that style, because when we have a flag raising or we have a month that there's a particular color of ribbon that we'd be celebrating, we could actually light up those lights in those colors. And I think that would really help bring Harmony Square back as a focal point for the city when we're doing those types of flag raisings. So is that something that is on your radar, or is it something that we would need to try to move forward now?
That's something that I haven't been involved in, but I can reach out to that staff. I can advise that we are looking at a design for the new City Hall to have flood lighting that can be changed for coloring as well. So,
oh, good.
But we can look into where that's at and see what the options are for Harmony Square.
Okay, and just my last question for you, Lise. Do you have any idea how happy we're all going to be if we're under budget? So good job, by the way.
That sentiment.
Yes, very good job. It's nice to see that we have a project that is very multifaceted. It just goes to show how well of a job you did facilitating it. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. I didn't see who went up next, but in order, Councillor Martin and then Councillor Carpenter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Lisa, follow-up question about the flagpole for flag raising ceremonies. Will that necessitate taking out the fountain that's there?
Yes, that would be the recommendation. We would need to take the fountain out. It's caused a lot of extra work for the maintenance staff. It's constantly breaking down.
And that's the second fountain, is it not? That'll be removed?
I'm not sure. It's the only one that I know of in Harmony Square.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Carpenter.
Lise, did I hear you say that we're going to be able to light up the new City Hall? Is it going to have some accent lighting so we can facilitate the building?
At this time, it hasn't. It wasn't included in the contract for the contractor to do that work, but we are working on design to get costing for that.
Yeah, because one of the things to highlight the City Hall would be the outside lighting and how it would highlight that building and that corner itself as a focal point in the city center. And just lastly, Councilor Martin's probably grinning because I remember we talked about that fountain at the very beginning of that Harmony Square, and he made the argument, I believe, and he correct me if I'm wrong, that we didn't need that fountain, and here we are taking it out. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I don't see any other hands up. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Weaver, seconded by Councillor Martin. Any discussion? Now, will you call a vote, please? All those in favour, raise your hands.
Thank you. It has carried unanimously.
Thank you very much. Okay, Lise, you're on again. 4.4, accommodation strategy projects.
So yeah, lastly, we just wanted to provide the task force with a quick update on the status of the next accommodation strategy phases. So the Parks Services temporary accommodation, you may remember this phase is intended to address the immediate operational pressures due to growth and existing site constraints at 1 Sherwood. Renovations will occur at 1 Sherwood to accommodate parks maintenance and horticulture, and will be planned with sustainability for future use in mind. Renovations will also occur at 400 Grand River Ave in the space that Brantford Power has recently vacated to accommodate turf maintenance and forestry. There's $750,000 that's been identified for this project in the 2021 capital budget, and staff are working on an RFP for the design, hoping to complete construction by early 2022. the Community Services and Social Development Department accommodations. This phase includes decentralizing the in-person services to the local community centers and creating a much smaller central hub near or within the downtown. An RFP is being developed to complete building and space needs assessment and a location study, and the preliminary design and including an updated Class D estimate. And this will bring back to the accommodation task force with the results from that. There is a $200,000 item been identified in the 2021 capital budget. And just to add as well that the scope is now including the consideration of the early on centers as well. The total budget estimate for this phase is estimated at 3.5 million at this time. The provincial—
Is that just for community services?
Yeah, that's for the
Okay.
decentralizing of the various into the various community centers, so upgrades that may be required in those centers, as well as outfitting a centralized hub within that downtown area.
Okay, thanks, Lisa.
But we'll come back with the Class D estimate to confirm that budget. The Provincial Offence Office's accommodation. This phase includes the relocation of the provincial offence offices to accommodate space and program pressures they're experiencing at 102 Wellington. The RFP is also being drafted for this to complete a space needs assessment and preliminary design and a Class D estimate. And we've identified $100,000 to complete that exercise in the 2021 capital budget. But the total budget estimate for that phase is $5 million at this time. In future phases, looking a little bit further down the road, we'll be working on the Earl Avenue project. These timelines, as you recall, have been amended and we've amended them in the capital budget for design to begin in 2022 with an expected completion of around 2025 or 2026. The total estimate for this phase of the accommodations is 36.7 million. So that completes my update. If you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer.
Well, I do have a question from CAO Hutchings. I almost said Councillor Hutchings.
It is not a question. It's just a pile on to Lisa's updates. Just one small, Lisa's in charge of facilities, but we've been working very closely, just so you know, this POA move. We're working very closely with Laurier as well, who's very interested. The mayor and I were on the phone with Wilford Laurier today, Brantford campus, the SCO, Heidi Northwood. We're very close. We've brought to council about doing an MOU. And the MOU isn't about a lease. The MOU is about collaboration for experiential learning for some of their students. They have students that study criminal studies as well as social work. They're very interested in having access to the courts and helping out in the courts and doing various things. So to give them students some experience, it'll help some of our staff out with some workload, and it's a win-win for both organizations. So we're looking at bringing a MOU and universities do lots of MOUs. It's something not that familiar with cities. It's more just how we're going to work together and provide experience to some of the students in our courts. So you'll see a bit of more of that. So the collaboration is starting to work, and the mayor's work with this on with Laurier. It's assisting. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hutchings. We have two on the list, Councillor Carpenter, followed by Councillor Weaver.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the POA move, we talked about the existing city hall. We wouldn't be selling that until we decide that whether we need it for POA or other options.
Correct, but it is, we have estimated the space needs for POA, and that footprint will not accommodate them. So we're pretty certain that the 102 Wellington won't accommodate their needs. They're probably looking for 15 to 20,000 square feet, and that building's only about 9,000.
I'm speaking about the existing city hall space that will be empty that we're in now.
Oh, the existing city hall is around 50,000 square feet, so it would be a little bit too big. We could, I guess,
we could accommodate there and lease out other space for.
That's possible. It would require a significant amount of investment needed to outfit that space too, to be able to do that.
Okay, and when you talk about the community hubs, I mean, we're talking about we're talking about, for example, adding a facility to Woodman Park. Would we not be looking at that as a community hub at the same time, so we could do the work all collectively?
That's the hope, to hopefully include that as well in there when we do those renovations.
Thank you. I think council has a lot of faith in Lisa in your work, so I look forward to seeing it.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Weaver.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Lisa, you had mentioned community centers. So I know that for the Southwest Community Center, I know staff have had some preliminary meetings with the Board of Education or with the local board to discuss what that's going to look like. Is there going to be a need to bring any designs or any information or project information to this committee? Or is it going to go straight to committee of the whole, or what's the process?
I think it may fit within the mandate.
Councillor, that's a great question. If I can answer through Mr. Councillor Utley. We are planning on bringing an update to the Southwest Committee. Obviously, southwest of the park, we would mainly focus on the park, but this is going that direction as well. And we'll work with clerks to see if that goes directly to committee of the whole, or it has to go through this committee, which would be like 3 layers. But we are working very collaboratively with the school board. We've had 2 or 3 meetings with them. We are looking at, as we said, the library's been, it's all funded within the budget, the library as well as a community center. And the previous, Lisa's previous comment, Councillor Weaver, since this was originally the idea, we are looking at putting a community service department in there as well, in addition to just the original community center idea. So they would also have an office down there as well in the Southwest, which there wouldn't be one. So let me take that back and figure out what clerks, and it goes to Southwest, it has to go to accommodations and go to committee hall, or goes directly to committee of the whole.
Okay, thank you very much.
You don't, Rick? Okay, thank you. I don't see any other hands up, so could I get a mover and seconder to receive this? Councillor Carpenter, seconded by Councillor Weaver. Any discussion? No? All those in favor, raise your hands, please. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. It's carried unanimously.
We'll move down to item 5, concept. I need a mover to accept the minutes of our September 29 meetings. Councillor Carpenter and Mayor Davis. Any discussion? None. All those in favor? Looks like it's carried. Thank you very much. There are no resolutions, no notices of motion. So with that, the meeting is adjourned, and I thank everyone for their great input. Lisa and your staff, you just did an outstanding job this evening. I think we all agree on that. So keep up the good work, exciting things ahead, and stay safe, everyone. And thanks for the viewing public from all of us if you were logging today. So thank you so much. And